Hello all, Corpse here. Today I will be sharing my thoughts on what I think canonically happens within the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. More so what endings I think actually happen that directly affects the second game in the series, Termina. Now, I don't think the creator, Miro, has stated what endings are true and what endings are just there for gameplay's sake, but through the 10 available endings, I think there are only 4 to 5 of them that are actual events that transpire within the first game. Some of my thoughts will also just be speculation, as some of my thoughts can be conflicting with the events that happened within the second game. You all will see what I mean much later here on the video. Timestamps will also be included in this video for you. Disclaimer: nothing I say in this video, as far as I know, has been stated to be true by Miro himself, but most of what I'm saying is only backed up by what happens in Termina, the second game. Obviously, you are allowed to agree or disagree with me, but if you do disagree, please let me know your thoughts and hypothesis in the comments below. With this out of the way, let's get to it. Cahara to me is the most challenging character to explain what I think canonically happens to within the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. He is never mentioned at all in the second game, and even more so considering what I think happens in the dungeon does not achieve his prime directive, saving Ragnvaldr. He was a hired mercenary given the mission to save the leader of the Knights of the Midnight Sun. It's my belief he either found Ragnvaldr dead or didn't find him at all. Cahara only came to the dungeons because he was granted a hefty reward that could allow his wife, who's a prostitute within the brothels of the kingdom of Ragnvaldr, and his unborn child to leave that life behind. This is important to think about considering the next thing I think happens in the game. I think Cahara was the only one to find and free the child in the dungeons. Considering his personality and undying love for his wife and unborn child, I would not put it past him to want to save another helpless, unarmed child. After saving the child, and perhaps not being able to escape the dungeons, or perhaps being asked by Nilvan, the child's mother, to bring her child to the depths of the dungeon, eventually runs through and reaches the end of the gauntlet. Once at the end of the gauntlet, the child transforms multiple times, eventually turning into the god of Fear and Hunger. At this point, I think one of 3 things could have happened. In Scenario 1, we take what happens in ending A at face value. The god of Fear and Hunger acknowledges Cahara's pain and suffering and decides to mercy kill him, knowing that he could never regain his sanity and live a comfortable life after knowing and experiencing all the horrors within the dungeon. In Scenario 2, perhaps the god of Fear and Hunger, instead of killing Cahara, puts him into an eternal dream. At the end of the game, in ending A, we are not shown exactly if the god of Fear and Hunger kills you or not, and it is my belief it was purposely open to speculation, much like most of things in Fear and Hunger series. This scenario is most definitely the least backed up. I have heard people talk about Cahara's S ending just being a dream, but that would also imply that the god of Fear and Hunger didn't fully give him a good dream or hallucination, as it states in his S ending. Still, you could not sleep. Every passing moment you would be grabbing on the hilt of your sword and staring at the dark corners of your room. It also cheekily calls Cahara's S ending the happy ending, when in fact he will forever be haunted by the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, never fully free. In Scenario 3, instead of the god of Fear and Hunger killing or putting Cahara into a dream or hallucination, perhaps transports him outside the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, allowing him to leave unharmed physically, but still forever mentally scarred. He also failed to save Ragnvaldr or earn any good amount of money, pretty much putting him right back to where he was, albeit now mentally deranged. This scenario is not backed up, much like Scenario 2, and is probably the most sad ending for Cahara. Out of these 3 scenarios, I think Scenario 1 is most likely to have happened. As like I said before, Cahara was never mentioned in Termina, and the child had to have been brought to the depths in order to ascend to godhood. And since Ragnvaldr and Enki are both mentioned in Termina, and what I think happens to Dars has nothing to do with the child, Cahara was the most logical character to have saved the child. Miro himself said that his absence implies something, most likely the character to see the child turn into the god of Fear and Hunger, aka ending A. Ragnvaldr, much like Enki, are the 2 easiest characters for me to explain what I think happens to, within, and after leaving the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. Both Ragnvaldr and Enki are mentioned somewhat in Termina, and for his section and Enki's section, both of my theories are all but confirmed considering the second game. Ragnvaldr, much like any of the other characters, wants to find Ragnvaldr, but from either his own hands or something else's, he finds the man who massacred his entire village and family dead. And I know what you're thinking. If Ragnvaldr is in fact dead, how is there the Yellow Knight, aka the Kaiser, in the second game? I will get to that during Dars's section of this video. After he kills Lagard, or finds him dead, I think Ragnvaldr decides to also kill almost every enemy within the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, or at least every being tainted with a dark soul. While doing so, he stumbles upon Moonless, a mutated cave wolf affected by the darkness, but not taken over by it. Ragnvaldr most likely lets this lone cave wolf join him by his side to either help him, or sensing she is no real danger and doesn't deserve to live the rest of her life in the dungeons of Fear and Hunger. After doing this and getting the Cube of the Depths back, and an item stolen from Vinland and then stolen by Lagard, he leaves and decides to dedicate his whole life to extinguishing any type of dark creature on Earth. This sums up his S ending in the game, but I will further try to prove that this S ending for Ragnvaldr is also canonical to the story. The reasons why I believe this is the canon ending for Ragnvaldr is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we see one of Ragnvaldr's implied descendants, August, in the second game. Not only does August look like Ragnvaldr, but he is also extremely experienced with a bow and arrow, much like Ragnvaldr. Along with him, we also see a fully grown Moonless as well. When the party fights Moonless and survives for long enough, August will intervene and make Moonless back off. This is probably because Moonless has been a companion for his family for centuries. Secondly, August mentions recognizing Abella's accent, since both Abella and August are from Oldegard, the birthplace of Ragnvaldr. While August doesn't have an accent of his own, he states that he is 1/4 of it himself and that his grandfather spoke it. On top of this, he states his entire family roots right from Oldegard. Lastly, we almost never see any dark creatures or monsters in the second game. This is probably because Ragnvaldr, Moonless, and his family all hunted them to the brink of extinction. I have no idea if they ever touched the continent of Vinland, but going off of the in-game lore, probably not, as we see Rancid the Serval. Mind you, the first game takes place sometime in the late 1500s, and the second game takes place in an alternate aftermath version of World War II in 1942. This would have given Ragnvaldr and his family countless centuries to kill every monster on Earth. If we put two and two together, it is pretty much confirmed that August is a descendant of Ragnvaldr, meaning Ragnvaldr survived the events of the first game, remarried, had at least one child, probably more, while Moonless stayed in the family as a companion hunting monsters. Enki is the easiest to go over for what I think happens to him in Fear and Hunger. This will probably also be the shortest of the sections in this video. Since Enki was born with the soul of enlightenment, he has always had a grand desire for knowledge, always endlessly pursuing new secrets. He came to the dungeons of Fear and Hunger out of spite. He was given a vision by Nilvana, letting him know that there was a prophesized man destined to usher in a new era of greatness. Since Enki didn't want another man to become a new god, or let someone else bask in the glory of the old gods, he embarked on a journey to find Lagard himself. Considering I think Enki's S ending is canon, he ends up finding Lagard dead. After finding him dead, Enki decides to take advantage of being in a place filled to the brim with books on topics relating to history, alchemy, and most importantly, the gods. Knowing he could never read all the literature in his lifetime, he wants to find a way to prolong his life. In the end, he does just this, and now has all the time in the world to read the books and write about his findings. He knew he didn't need to become a god to reach true enlightenment. What makes me think that his S ending is canonical ending for Enki is that we straight up can read numerous Godskin Bibles written directly by Enki himself. We even find out his last name, which it's very hard for me to try to pronounce, so I'm not going to do it. With his prolonged life, I would think he is still alive and kicking in the second game, still writing more books centuries later. Like I said in the beginning of this video, some of my thoughts will be very conflicting. This is very true with what I think happens with Darce and Lagard. As the people who have played Termina know, you're able to fight the Yellow King, aka the Kaiser, aka Lagard. This means that Lagard had to have been able to survive the events of Fear and Hunger and also ascend to godhood. While I agree with thinking Lagard has to ascend to godhood in order to become the Yellow King and for August to even come to Rehevel in the first place, this does not necessarily mean that he didn't die. In the fight with the Yellow King in Termina, or the second game, after casting Rot on him, he goes from having normal skin, albeit very white, to having a more red and blood golem-esque look. Now this just could be because of the Rot, however, I think there is more to this than meets the eye. In Fear and Hunger, if you complete Darce's S ending, meaning you obtained all 3 pages of the Sylviana spell Rebirth, once you bring back Legarde, he has a much more ghoulish appearance, much like if you use Rot on him in Termina. To me, this means that Darce not only escaped the dungeons of Fear and Hunger, but also brought back Legarde after his death by the hands of Ragnvaldr or some third other party. After being revived, Legarde would then sit on the throne and ascend to godhood, being able to make himself appear human once more. Darce would spend the rest of her life by his side until her death. While this is not confirmed, and Darce's S ending states that his rebirth Legarde is mentally a changed man as well, I think that this is what canonically happens to Darce and Legarde. Now, what is the most conflicting to me is that the S ending text and what we can clearly see in Termina. In Darce's S ending, it states that he had turned into a beast, craving to unleash the terror and suffering he experienced to the outside world. This does not sound like the same Legarde we know through the dialogue in the game, or the second game. But again, I think each of the endings were left ambiguous to the player so that we could form our own theories and headcanons. Well, I think this is going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys thought about this video, and let me know if you have any opinions that are different from mine. I would love to discuss this game in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day. And remember, don't delve too deep.